Do you need mobility work? When should you mobilize? When should you stretch? When should you strength train? What's up, everybody? My name's Dr. Michael Mash from Barbell Rehab, and today we're talking about whether you need to do mobility work. So before we get started, make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel. That'll make sure that this message gets to as many people that need it as possible and that you get notified when we post again. Today we're talking about mobility and whether you need to do mobility drills or not. This is a really big buzzword in the fitness industry right now. Mobilize, 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 stretch, 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 all that fun stuff. But do we really need to do it? So let's talk about mobility in the first place. What do you actually define mobility as? To me, mobility is, can I get into a position that I need to do for the task at hand? If you can get into that position, then you're mobile enough to do that task. We're not talking about, am I strong enough to do it? Do I have the muscular endurance to do it? Do I have the work capacity to do it? Mobility is simply, can I get into the optimal position to do the task that I want to? If you can, congratulations, you don't need mobility work. If you can't because it's too tight or it hurts, then maybe you need to modify the way you do it in order to try and get into a better position. But what it really comes down to is this. If you have the mobility to do something, then we don't need to go stretching randomly just because we were told to. Like, for example, let's talk about ankle dorsiflexion, right? The half kneeling knee to wall ankle dorsiflexion test is an SFMA test that measures the amount of closed chain dorsiflexion that one has. So what you do is you get into the half kneeling position and you're testing the front leg, and what you're seeing is how far can you get the foot away from the wall while still being able to touch your knee to the wall without your heel coming off the ground. What SFMA will say is that 4 to 5 inches is considered normal, and anything less than 4 to 5 inches is something that is considered abnormal, and that would require mobility work. You don't need 4 or 5 inches on your half kneeling ankle dorsiflexion test, especially a wide stance, toes turned out, low bar squat. You don't need 4 or 5 inches on your half kneeling ankle dorsiflexion test to get into that position. So therefore, if you don't have 4 or 5 inches, but you have 1 or 2 and you're able to get into the low bar squat position and allow all the joints to be biomechanically sound, you don't need to just randomly mobilize into ankle dorsiflexion in order to get that extra 3-4 inches, because you have enough mobility to do the task you want to do. Just because it doesn't meet up to some random standard of 4 to 5 inches doesn't mean that you need to spend all kind of time randomly just improving mobility to reach this standard. On the other hand, if you train the overhead squat, then 4 to 5 inches of closed chain dorsiflexion is probably necessary in order to get the knees forward enough in order to optimally get into the overhead squat position. If this is the case, then you're going to want to mobilize your ankles to try and get some more ankle dorsiflexion. Now is the case where you don't have enough mobility in order to get into the position that you need to get in for sport. So, in other words, we don't need to just go randomly mobilizing all of our joints and all of our body parts just to get to some random standard of mobility. The only time you really need to do mobility work is if you don't have the mobility necessary to do a task that you want to do. Does that make sense, right? So don't waste your time just randomly mobilizing joints if you really don't even need to be mobile in that joint to do what you want to do in the first place. Your time would be better off spent maybe strength training and doing some aerobic capacity work versus just randomly stretching. So that's the deal on mobility. Mobility is very, very task and case specific. We only want to focus on mobility drills and mobility work in order to do the tasks at hand, not just randomly increasing mobility. So if you like this video, again, please like and subscribe to this channel. That'll make sure that you get notified when we post again and we get our message to as many people as possible. We appreciate it. Until next time, I'm Dr. Michael Mash with Barbell Rehab. Thanks.